and state that in the chat now. If you already know that you want to speak, you'll definitely have an opportunity still to raise your hand as those agenda items come up, but just to help us prepare and kind of get an idea of how many people want to speak on each item, it would be great if you could go ahead and do that. And then I think most of you guys know how to raise your hand, but just you would go to the participants tab, and there is a little blue hand raise button, and that's how you'd indicate that you want to speak later on. Okay, let's go ahead with roll call. Claire, could you call the roll?
Len Erickson.
I think he's on mute.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll come back to him. Dan Haggerty.
Here.
Len Erickson here.
Len Erickson's here. Okay. Barbara Mathewson.
Here.
Dave Olson.
Here.
I'm here. Michelle Weil.
Here.
Everybody, all council members are present.
Great. Okay, and then let's move on to item number 1, which is the Board of Supervisors report. I think Lena is going to give that.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Lena Silverman and I work in the office of Supervisor Don Horsley. Thank you for having me tonight. I don't have too many updates today, so it should be relatively quick, but to start kind of with the most stressful one, I think the one that's on many of our minds is COVID. So for everyone, I'm going to do a really quick little backgrounds. There's a tier system in our state. It goes through 4 tiers ranging from yellow, which is the most minimal and least restrictive, to purple, which is widespread and the most restrictive. So this tier is adjusted by adjusted case rate, positivity rate, and the equity metric. So this past week, we have moved from orange to a more restrictive red. This is a trend we're seeing all throughout the state. Most of the counties in our state are actually in purple. So kind of what to expect, what they're telling us is that we should expect to probably go back into purple at some point. We're just not exactly sure when that will be. No need for panic. We have tons of capacity in our hospitals. We have tons of capacity for distancing if people can't distance on their own. But just keep wearing a mask, keep being diligent. I know next week is the holidays, so it's really tempting to see someone we love, and maybe it's time to try and remix it a little bit, do a Zoom call, find something else. On a slightly brighter note, the compliance team has been highly successful. This is a team you can reach by calling 211 to report businesses that are not in COVID-19 compliance. They've had 400 calls so far. They've gone to half of them, and what they found is that people really do want to comply. They usually just don't realize that they're not complying. So they've been quite successful at, getting the paper signage up that needs to be up, or educating the businesses on how they can be a little safer. Sorry if I'm stepping on anyone else's toes, and I'm not going to go too far into this, but there's a special meeting of the Half Moon Bay City Council tomorrow at 6 p.m. This is regarding the acquisition of 2 hotels. One is the Coastside Inn, and the other is the Quality Inn, and these will be used for housing for people who are either experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness, many that are impacted by COVID-19. I'm just a little plug, SMC Strong is still going, so if you need any food resources, housing resources, financial resources, childcare, we have a huge amount of resources available. I'll include the link to that in the chat. And then I'm including this kind of because I know writing this stressed me out a little bit. So some brighter news. The RCD has been doing some really great work. Their chipper program has been amazing. I've been getting calls all week from people who have used the chipper program and are so impressed with how great it is. So if you have a lot of wood and you would like to maybe reduce your fuel load on your property, I'll include a link in the chat to how you can access that. On Monday and Tuesday of this week, we released 10,000 juvenile coho salmon into the wild. We put them in Memorial Park. So we've been doing a huge amount of work, kind of working with reducing erosion in a lot of the creeks up along the coast. So this was a project that's been years in the making and we're really excited about, and I'll include a link with more details to that as well. And then finally, the RCD also has a new liaison for specifically eucalyptus removal. I am meeting with her next week. She seems wonderful, and I'm going to include her contact information as well. So that's all the information I have today.
Thanks, Lena. Let's go on to Harvey from City of Half Moon Bay.
Lena stole my thunder. The big announcement I was going to make is because of CARES Act funding and Project Room Key, tomorrow at 6 p.m., we're going to have a special city council meeting to talk about the county's acquisition of these two hotels, the Coastside Inn and the Quality Inn. And I'm really excited about it. There's a deadline of December 31st to actually finish the acquisition. That's what the hurry up is all about. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity to help our homeless and poor neighbors. And you're all invited to come, make your comments at 6 p.m. tomorrow through Zoom, usual Zoom. Thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has them.
It looks like Lisa Ketchum has her hand up. And I apologize, I forgot to call on people if they had questions for Lena. So if anyone has questions for either Harvey or Lena, please go ahead and raise your hand. Lisa, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Lisa Ketchum, Planning Commission. I just have a very brief report. As reported today by the Planning Director, 2 items of importance to Midcoast are scheduled for the Planning Commission on December 9th. The Harbor Village 50 Space RV Park, which was continued from the Planning Commission December 2019 meeting. And the other one is the Moss Beach Chevron Landscape Buffer, which was continued from the March 2020 Planning Commission meeting. The agenda should be posted next week, probably by Wednesday, and the staff report should be available by the Thursday before the meeting. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I see Beverly raising her hand, and then we also are going to hear from Chris Johnson in just a minute. But Beverly, go ahead. Who did you have a question for?
I did have a question for Ms. Silverman about the chipper program on the coast side. Is this chipper program also available for Montera?
Absolutely, it definitely is. And I don't know off the top of my head what dates they are going to Montera, but I have that in the link so I can look that up and let you know.
Thanks. And the question for the mayor, the Half Moon Bay acquisition of these hotels for the homeless, are you actually purchasing them?
I'm not the mayor anymore. That was last year, but
Oh, sorry, Harvey.
that's no big deal. The money comes from the CARES Act through the county to purchase the proposal is to purchase the 2 hotels if everything goes through.
Oh, lock, stock, and barrel. Wow.
Lock, stock, and barrel.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great. And I see Greg has his hand up. Greg Dieguez.
Yeah, for Lena, I think it was August 24th, Dan Haggerty wrote Supervisor Horsley with concern about the eucalyptus in Quarry Park. And I think it was October 12th when I wrote a several-page letter to all the supervisors and members of the planning staff, et cetera, with essentially a portfolio of issues about disaster preparedness, whether it be fire or evacuation. And one of the recommendations I made in there was to put somebody in charge. There were a bunch of others, and the supervisors seemed to be thinking the same way at the meeting that was held the next day. So my question for you, Lena, is rather than put you on the spot every week about what's going on, would you ask Supervisor Horsley, has someone been put in charge? Have they created an issues list? And who's going to report on it? Have agencies been assigned to each of the issues? Have they accepted responsibility? So we don't have to make a special deal out of it asking you. Can't we just get a report on the fire preparedness and disaster evacuation issues we all know we face? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Greg. So I can respond to that briefly. We have an ad hoc committee of the 2 supervisors, Supervisor Horsley and Supervisor Canepa. That committee is now going to be creating that is the ad hoc committee, and they will be creating a work group We're in coordination with that we're scheduled to have our first meeting in December. So that work group's going to be different experts on the issues from the area. And for eucalyptus, I'm coordinating with Erica Harris, who is the new RCD head of eucalyptus. I don't know what her title is, but that's what she's going to be working on. So that's all I have from between the last 2 weeks since we last met.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, Beverly.
I actually can't locate my raise hand feature, so that's why I'm doing that.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, see at the bottom of your screen, you should see the participants list.
Right.
It's one of the tabs. And if you click on that, your participant list will pop up on the right side, and it should be right under there. There should be a blue
Okay.
raise hand and then a yes, no, or there's different
Yeah.
buttons there.
No, it's giving me an invite or a four-leaf clover.
Okay, yeah. For me, it's right above that. It's okay. I've seen you last time and this time, so go
Okay.
ahead with your question, and I'll try to look out for you.
I don't have, that was my question for now, but I just
okay.
said I'll be raising it in the public comment.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go to Chris, who is going to give an update on the pump track and CDRC. Chris Johnson.
Thanks, Michelle. This is an update on the Quarry Park pump track on November 4th. San Mateo County Parks, in conjunction with Gates and Associates, the landscape architects on this project, hosted a virtual community input meeting regarding the design proposals they currently have for the pump track. This gave the public an opportunity to provide feedback and indicate their preference on a couple of the different variables in the track design, which includes both the overall layout and some of the individual features. Just a real quick recap, there's 3 different plans. All 3 plans feature an outside encircling track that includes a variety of skills features, which I'll discuss in a minute. And then each design also has 2 interior tracks inside the larger track, a beginner's track and an intermediate track. The intermediate track is the only difference between the 3 designs. So there's 3 different intermediate track designs. So it's a little confusing, but once you figure that out, it actually then you only have a few things to look at. Okay, so there were 56 participants at this meeting. And they gave them a survey on a couple of the things. For one, the track choice of the 3 intermediate tracks. The Flying X got 94% of the votes, and the Butterfly got the other 6%. Merger got 0, just in case you're doing the math, Greg Diegues. Features for the skills loops, there were several, and you were to choose 3. The rhythm section, which is a section of rollers like this, got 79%. A bridge wave, which is a similar feature, but it's made out of wooden slats and kind of has some variation in both up and down and side to side. That also got 79%. The log pile, which is exactly what it sounds. It's a obstacle in which you ride over a pile of logs. Very helpful skill for the trail. Got 58%. The teeter-totter, which is very cool. You ride up a teeter-totter, and then as you get to the apex, it goes down, and you have to kind of brace yourself and ride off the other side. 52%. Rock garden, 21%. The county parks director reaffirmed at this meeting the following. The location is confirmed. It will be a dirt track of less than an acre. That is confirmed. Drainage will be an integral part of the design. No jumps. Okay, these are rolling features which you can catch air off of these things, and skilled riders will be able to double up, go maybe from one rolling element and land on another. But that's different than jumps there, and there will be no jumps in this track. Also, the director didn't address this, but it needs to be addressed because it's been brought up on Nextdoor and other places. There will be no racing here. There's no official racing. There's no pump track racing league or any way to race pump track. There will be people riding and testing their abilities, and maybe a couple of buddies might challenge themselves on a straightaway or something. but there's not going to be hundreds of people showing up with vendors and bands and stuff for a competition at this track. This is a community installation that is open to the public, and people that are worried that there's going to be people from all over the Bay Area coming here, that's one of the reasons why we want to put one of these here. Other communities are doing that so people don't have to drive to Santa Cruz or San Jose or Cupertino to go to a bike park or a pump track. And so once there's more of these in local communities, then it's mostly the local people using it. The county will be responsible for ongoing maintenance. And this, I know people are interested in this. Don't freak out though. The county said, Nicholas Calderon said there's no current plans to add an additional parking area. They're going to add a few more spots to the current configuration and figure out maybe some other shuttle system or something, but they're not have a plan yet, maybe as part of the Quarry Park master plan. Estimated completion date, summer 2021. Construction won't start until April 2021. You can still participate in the survey I mentioned about the different tracks and the features by going to the San Mateo County Parks website and find the survey there. Also, either now or very soon, you'll be able to see a video of the virtual community meeting I'm just reporting on the MCC website. Okay, and then I don't know if you want to have me take any questions if there are any, or give a real quick recap of the Coastline Design Review Committee meeting from last week, Michelle.
Let's do, go ahead with the CDRC meeting, and then we can take questions for everything.
Yeah, thank you. This is real quick. So the Coastline Design Review Committee held its monthly meeting last Thursday, November 12th. We had general discussion, general public comment, and 4 project hearings. And real quick, the project hearings, we had 1 in Montero, 1 in El Granada, 2 in Moss Beach. All were approved. The 1 in El Granada had been carried over from a previous meeting. So all 4 were either approved straight out or recommended for approval. The difference is whether they need additional permits. Yeah, the CDRC only recommends for approval if other permits are required. If no other permits are required, they can straight approve. And that's all I have. And I'll take any, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, looks like Sid Young has her hand raised. Go ahead, Sid.
I got here a little late because I didn't have the link right, but thank you, Len, for posting it. I was going to ask about the Quarry Park thing. How much are you guys contributing to build something on county land? Did they give you an amount yet or a percentage?
When you say you guys, who are you referring to, Sid?
I guess I'm referring to Granada Sanitary and Parks District, or whatever they call themselves, GCSD.
GCSD, right. So GCSD has not officially committed the cash or the money through a board vote yet. They have had a board vote confirming their support for this project. Mm-hmm. And the number 100,000 has been mentioned. Whoa. But Sid, as part of Measure G from 2013, this is not additional property tax money that's being taken from GCSD ratepayers. This is already part of the fee structure.
So it's basically already budgeted for 100,000 contribution to the Quarry Park, what are they calling it? Pump track, right?
I don't know if it's actually budgeted yet because they haven't approved it, but Parks money there's a separate pool for Parks money for GCSD from the property taxes they collect.
Oh, so somewhat is in a budget somewhere then. Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Sid, I don't have, I bet you could go to their website and see some financial documents. I don't know about those. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a rough idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay.
So let's move on to the next section, which is public comment.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I know Beverly wanted to speak during this section, so please go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Oh, you're on mute, Beverly. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Beverly Garrity I'm the chair of the CDRC. CDRC is really interested in developing its communication liaisons with various groups. As you can see, Chris has been giving you updates from our monthly meetings. Additionally, CDRC would like to liaise with the architectural design review subcommittee that exists on the Midcoast Community Council. So I have a couple questions for you. When are your new members going to be established on the Midcoast Community Council?
So we're going to have the first meeting of December is when the new members will be sworn in. I
Okay,
believe that's scheduled for the 9th, if I'm
all
not
right.
mistaken. Yeah, Wednesday the 9th.
Mhm. And will you be shifting membership around on your various committees? Does that happen at that time as well?
Yeah, we will hold elections for the main positions, which are the chair, the vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. Beyond that, we will hold a retreat, usually in January sometime. Sometimes it gets pushed into February, I think, where we will decide who wants to focus on specific areas. It's not, uh, I wouldn't say it's like committees, but just like people's areas of focus.
All right. When you do that, is there a means by which we could discuss how to liaise with the CDRC and so you help us gain an understanding of the MCC criteria for evaluating projects that are in planning and building and
Yeah, I think so. We can definitely talk about that. I mean, the retreat is going to be open to the public. I don't know. I have to refresh my memory if we have time to like discuss with the public during that. I think it's mostly just we kind of plan what who's going to be on what, but I'm sure that whoever is interested in you know planning and building could liaise with CDRC for sure.
Right.
sure.
And
Uh,
if I
would you-
can cut in here, Beverly, Michelle, I, and Claire are the ones who normally review the planning permits and applications that get sent to the council.
Mhm.
I'm sure the three of us could meet with you and several other people on the CRC ahead of that if you wanted.
That would be excellent. Does that need to be a formal meeting?
No,
That would be excellent. So maybe we can establish a coffee at some time just to understand your process and see how we can interact. All right.
Sure.
I'll be in contact then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, you had your hand raised. Did you want to speak?
yeah, I wanted to say that for all intents and purposes, the San Mateo County election count is complete. There's some 1,800 ballots that were not machine readable, but I don't think there's any chance they can change the results. So I wanted to say, and I think this was already in the Half Moon Bay review, earlier results, but we have had the highest turnout vote for the MCC ever at 89.35%. And I think the highest total number of votes at 7,600. So the three winners, and you can go look at the election results if you really want to know who has what, were Dan Haggerty, so he's reelected, Joe Grant, and Greg Diakins. So welcome the new members. Be sure to be here on our December 9th meeting to be sworn in, and I'm sure Len or Michelle will be in touch with you about that.
Thanks. Yeah, and congratulations to the new members. Let's go ahead with Dolores Silva. Dolores.
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Hi.
I just wanted to announce, many of you know, as you are subscribers to Resist Density, but on Monday, we sent out a notice that we have changed our name. We are now going to be known as Midcoast Eco. And we invite you to visit our website, and it's been updated. It's got a lot more information, and it's midcoasteco.org. We have now added recommendations under most of the sections, and we just want to further stress we're an advocacy group, and we look at the major projects. I know some projects that some people would like to see on there are not discussed yet, but we're working on trying to be sure that we present our view once we understand, like for example, the Montera new hotel that was just discussed last night. So there's a lot still going on, and we hope you'll visit us. And if you have any recommendations for us or any comments, please, by all means, send them to us. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dolores. Greg Diegues?
Well, if you're offering me condolences, I mean, congratulations for my election. I wanted to say a word for Barbara Matheson, because that means that she will be retiring and doing an even better job in her garden. And I want to thank her for her contribution. So.
Yes. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks,
you.
Greg, for pointing that out. And Barbara will be attending one last meeting, I think, on December 9th. So we will give her a proper send off then.
I think our tradition has been that departing members make a little statement about their experiences and the wish for the future. So be prepared, Barbara.
I'll have to think about that one. Thank you.
Farewell.
Okay. And Sid Young, it looks like you have your hand raised as well.
Yes, I had a really quick question for Dolores. I don't know if she's still on, but a lot of the MCC website had links that went back to certain documents on resist density. And I wondered if those will still be live as far as a link goes on the old platform.
I'll have to check.
Okay.
We did check that our links going back to the MCC still works. So hopefully everything is still there. But
yeah, are you going to be redirecting your old website to the new website?
I think Karen is the one that has really worked on that. And yes, she is doing that. But we will double check. Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sid. And Dolores. Okay. Looks like that's it for public comment. Let's go on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from October 28th on the consent agenda. Claire, can you call the roll and see? And we'll vote on this. So this is voting on approval of the minutes from October 28th.
Need a motion first.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're on mute.
Claire?
Mute, Claire.
Voting to approve that, Len?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's 7-0-6-0.
Great, thank you. Okay, on to the regular agenda. So the first item on the regular agenda is about the Virginia Avenue crosswalk in Moss Beach. Len is going to be speaking on this, as well as I believe Ken from Caltrans. So I'll hand it over to you, Len.
Thank you. Last week, Michelle and I met with people from Caltrans to go over their plans for the Virginia Avenue crossing. They have a full-blown presentation on it, as well as their plans to present to us. So I'm going to turn this over to, I believe, Ken Ju. You're going to lead this discussion, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and you can go ahead and share your screen.
Sure, let me try it. And then here, I believe you all can see my screen now, right?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Ken,
Okay.
would you mind putting it into presentation mode so it appears a little larger?
Make it larger. Actually, yeah, I'm going to put into the presentation mode soon.
Perfect.
Yeah, let me see, run it to here. let me see, is it running? Okay, here you go, right?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, council members and everyone. My name is Ken Su from Caltrans Office of Electrical Design and Operations. I'm the acting office chief. Thank you for inviting me tonight to present a project that over at the location Highway 1 and Virginia Avenue crosswalk in Moss Beach. There is a project to provide pedestrian safety enhancement. And let's review the location together first. Here's the location that showing to you the previous condition prior to July 2019, last year. And this location or intersection is just one of many uncontrolled intersections along Highway 1. As you can see that there's no any warning for pedestrian crossing at this location on the left of the screen. What we do here in July 2019, by reviewing the area, we discovered that this should have some sort of a warning and marked crosswalk, just because there is a nearby commercial residential use area, sheriff station, food, childcare services nearby. There's also existing lighting. Some upstream pet warning signs are also being installed. You're going to see those advanced warning very soon in the next slide. So then we install these features to respond the concern from the community. Here's the advanced warning sign that you can see on the northbound Highway 1 south of Cypress Avenue, about 1,000 feet south of Virginia Avenue. On the left picture you see. The right picture, as you see that it's on the southbound Highway 1, about 2,800 feet north of Virginia, south of Carlos Street. And here what you can see it's the before and now. As we have reviewed it earlier, that there's no marked crosswalk. People are crossing with struggling to the motorists or traffic. Now we do have a marked crosswalk with some signs at the crosswalk together with a sharp T, giving a little bit highlighted warning to motorists. There may be some pedestrian movement around. And as you can also see that we near the crosswalk, we have multiple signs with the advanced sign at about probably 200 feet away from the crosswalk. At the crosswalk, we do have a signs, double-sided on each side of the roadway. We have the U sign at the pointing to the sharp T marking, so motorists can stop at the sharp T location where you can see a rectangular red box. But we still receive complaints from drivers in having some sort of warning, additional warning necessary. So that's why we consider to provide another improvements under another project, which is going to happen soon. Here's the project design plans, as you can see, superposed onto the aerial photo. This installation will be involving the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, or RFB. You're going to see the effects soon later to address the community concern regarding pet and pedestrian and vehicle conflicts. Here, if you can see my cursor or my little arrow, that is the location where the RRFB will be. It's on either side of the roadway, and we'll have a double-sided RFB together with some signage. And we'll have another lighting to improve the brightness or intensity at the crosswalk area. And we also modify the area for ADA improvements, so then people can have a better landing ready to go across. This is the design overview. And talking about RFB, you may wonder what are they consisted of. They all definitely require utility service with the service pedestal that can power up the safety lighting, and as well as the RFB system. The RFB consists of a RFB controller, definitely needed, and a flashing lights, as well as the accessible pedestrian signal, which is APS we normally call, and signs is a must, is essential. The project right now is it's a scope to install the RFB signs at pavement markers. The contract is a North Cal General Construction Corporation. The estimated cost is about $250K. It's going to be within this fiscal year 2021. The working days are approximately about 20 days. Completion will be probably by March 2021. Why are we taking this time? Just because right now the contractors are ordering some supporting poles, such as the light pole. These are going to take some time to fabricate. I'm sure that's what they said to us, that due to the pandemic, the production seems like having a little time delay. So that will run this project a little longer as compared to normal project. And this is the conceptual or maybe visual effect that you would see once the project is completed. You're going to see, as I said earlier, on either side of the roadway with the signs and the RFB signal on each supporting pole. The safety lighting, as you can see, it's at the southbound direction. And then we have on the left side of your picture, you can see the new paving for ADA compliance. So then right now I know it's grass or unpaved area. Okay, now I'm sure that you probably want to see a demonstration videos having some sort of a visual effect of the devices or maybe the system. Let's take a look at that.
Flashing lights are there for a reason, so why not use them? When you use an enhanced crosswalk, be sure to use the button-activated flashing beacons to let cars know you are going to cross. Take control of your own safety. Use the pedestrian-activated flashing beacons when available.
What you are seeing now, this is at the other time of the day, such as the evening downtime. The next, you're going to see the nighttime effect. Here you are. And I want to emphasize that by using the this system, pedestrian crossing the roadway or actually Highway 1, they all still have to be very cautious. So the walk will make sure that traffic or vehicle will stop nearby the crosswalk or where the shock keys is supposed to be, and then you walk across with caution. So now with this, thank you for listening or watching my presentation. I would like to take some questions if there's any. I see some raised hands. Let me go.
Let's go ahead and take questions from the council first, I believe, and then we'll go through and ask for questions from the community. So this is pretty much like clarifying questions. Let's go around. Dave, do you have anything?
No question from me, but I'll ask because I'm sure somebody is going to ask sooner or later. The beacons are normally off. They're only on when the button's pressed, and then they go off after a short period of time. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct. The beacon is going to be on at the time when the pedestrian push the button, actuate the system that will go on at the time the buttons are pushed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Barbara, do you have anything?
I do. Thank you. I have two questions. One is, has there been any consideration about lowering the speed limit through that area? Because it's still 50 miles an hour, which is pretty fast to have those lights come on. I'm just wondering about that. And secondly, the west side, I'm going to assume, is not going to be ADA compliant because that's got a pretty steep incline or decline on it. So I'm just wondering why it has to be ADA compliant on one side. Thank you.
Yes, I think the team actually evaluated the situation already at the time when they developed the the plans or project. Because of the concern from a citizen, we would want to have a fast action to provide additional enhancements. So we quickly looked through the funding, and then we found that the maximum we can do is possibly utilize the existing funding can mitigate one side of the roadway. The other side may take a little bit more effort to do modification, just like you said earlier, has a slope and probably to do some sort of modification to the roadway or to level the roadway. And that probably is going to come in with subsequent projects to make such a ADA compliance on the other side in the future or maybe later day.
Well, excuse me, but doesn't that kind of put the state in a awkward situation with only half of it being done? I mean, what if somebody comes across to go get a burrito and they're in a wheelchair or something and they fall? What are they going to do?
I'm not sure if Hong, you can come in to give a little to address this in your point of view, or maybe we should take this question back to the team and ask them to address it.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. This is Sean Nazari. I'm the Deputy District Director for Traffic Operations at Caltrans. And let me try to address that question. I think our initial investigation is that we only need the paving on the, I would say, the east side of the intersection for ADA compliance. It seems like the west side is already compliant. We can look into that further to see if any additional improvements are needed on that side. And as far as the question about the speed limit reduction, as you know, we look at the 85th percentile speed for setting the speed limit for the highways. So we can continue monitoring the location. We can't unilaterally go ahead and reduce the speed if we know that the motorists aren't going to comply with that. So we can continue monitoring the location. If at a point in the future we can reduce the speed limit, then we will consider it. It doesn't necessarily mean that the speeds will be reduced if we unilaterally go in and put a speed limit sign there. You know, a lot of times, you know, it's the motorist perception of what safety is on the highway that, you know, sets the speed limit for them and for the highway. So I would say we can defer that question for the future. My perception is that we will continue monitoring the location, and if the speed limit reduction is in order, we can look into that in the future. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Just a real point clarifying, going back to the crosswalk, you stated your team decided that the east side, the west side is compliant. Is that what you said?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, well, I don't believe that's correct. but you might want to have your team recheck that. Thank
We
you.
can, sure, we can recheck that. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Barbara. Let's go to Claire next.
Okay. Two questions. One, your safety light, which I presume is the street light thing, that's already there. Is that correct?
No, that the one that over on the let me see, it's on the east side of the on actually for northbound. That one was installed, I believe, under the city's, actually county's workforce. We are actually having additional. It's going to be installed at the southbound on the west side of the roadway.
So there would be street lights, in my terminology, on each side of the road?
Right, unless the county will do something to modify the existing lighting. Otherwise, yes, there will be two. One is from Caltrans to be installed on the west side of the roadway. And the existing east side, we are not going to remove it.
Okay, if the county decided to remove its light, would Caltrans care? Would they put in one of their own, or what would happen?
Well, when we do our design, we have actually designed our lighting to meet the safety requirement already. So with or without the lighting, our lighting will provide the sufficient lighting intensity over shining over on the crosswalk.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, we wouldn't need two street lights. One would be sufficient as long as it was Caltrans light.
Yes, correct.
Okay. The other thing, I was envisioning this with these flashing beacons a little bit more toward the actual road, maybe not over the road, perhaps like a hawk light, but something that people would see more directly as they looked at the road. I'm not entirely sure how visible these are going to be from on the side of the road, where I guess is where they are. I'm thinking about the installation in Half Moon Bay on Kelly Street, which we can comment about pros and cons, but I'm just verifying that these are not in the roadway; they're to the side of the roadway, correct?
Correct. They're going to be mounted on the side of the roadway, in about possibly 10 feet above the ground on a supporting metal pole.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Claire. And then next is Dan.
Yes. I've got a few questions, and I want to start out with two. First of all, can you provide an example of an existing crosswalk with a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit? And also, can you go over one more time, please, the how the is it 88 or 85 percentile? Does that mean that if 85% of the people are driving at 50 miles an hour, that prevents you from lowering the speed? Can you just explain how that, evaluation works?
Yes, I can try that. This is Sean Nazari again. In general, we rely on the average driver's experience with the highways in terms of speed limit setting. So basically, if drivers feel like it's safe to drive at 50 miles per hour on a highway with a certain geometric conditions, and 85% of drivers can negotiate that highway at that location, at that speed safely, we would find that that's a safe speed for that location. So in general, if we set a speed limit at a lower speed than that, chances are there'll be violations of that speed, because the majority of the drivers feel that it's safe and find that safe. So that's how, in general, the speed limits are set on all of California highways, and in fact, in all of the nation's highways.
And that
Hello,
includes when,
everybody. This
hello?
is Hung Tran from Traffic Investigation of Caltrans. Let me explain a little bit more about speed limit, establishing speed limit. The speed limit is determined by the vehicle code, and basically it relies on a traffic engineering survey, and the speed is based on 85 percentile speed, as Sean just said. Simply say, the 85 percentile speed is the speed at which and lower that 85% of traffic travel at. For example, we measure or we survey 100 vehicles go through this area, and we found that 50 miles per hour is the speed that only 15% of traffic go over it. So we determine the speed limit based on that 85 percentile. And that was guided and discussed by the vehicle code.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm not extremely happy with it, but it is a sufficient answer at this time. Also,
Dan, it has been 3 minutes. Do you have another quick question?
yes.
Okay.
So the light pole that is going to be installed, is it at all possible to have, I think when you're driving down the road, there's a balance between light glaring and blinding the driver versus being able to see the pedestrian waiting to cross, that there actually is a pedestrian standing there ready to cross. So in my mind, it would be more appropriate to have a lower light that is shining right above the head of the pedestrian waiting, so that they stand out much more than the whole, than blind, lighting up the whole road. Having that light reach out a little bit into the road, but when the light is so high, it has a double-edged sword effect. It's blinding the driver, and it's impacting the neighborhood and the community as well.
Right. I can add that this light would not be blinding at blinding levels. Basically, the lighting at intersections is enough to identify potential conflicts, whether pedestrian or other, conflicting traffic movements for drivers. So in no way is it going to be blinding. It's just sufficient enough for drivers to see that they're approaching that intersection, and there may be, potential traffic conflicts there, including pedestrians. When it comes to pedestrians, we certainly want to include lighting because the potential for error is, fairly, significant in terms of, major injury or, potential, even worse fatalities. So,
thank you. I'm still waiting for a location, an example location where they have this type of rectangular flashing beacon on a highway that is at 50 miles an hour. I'd like to know where
Okay, we need to move on after this question. So let's let Caltrans answer that. Do we have another location that is similar?
Well, this is an evolving thing. These rectangular rapid flashing beacons are a relatively new tool in the toolbox for traffic engineers to provide for traffic safety for pedestrians. We don't have necessarily any in the Bay Area, but there probably are examples elsewhere.
So is this the first one in California?
I don't think so, but we can check into that and let you know.
Yeah,
Yes,
it'd be
please.
great if you could get back to us on that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Len, did you have anything that you wanted to say? Any questions? You're on mute. Not sure if you're speaking.
Yeah. No, this
Nope.
item was just intended for information to the public for the questions as we've been asking them here. I think they have a plan to go ahead, and we're planning to view it as an iterative process as they put it in. So once the questions are done, this agenda item is done.
Okay, let's go to the public. Looks like first is Chris Johnson.
Thanks, Michelle. So these questions may be for Sean. Have a series of questions. Hopefully they can be answered quickly and we can get through them quickly. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the questions. When was this plan that you presented tonight? When was this developed?
Well, as Ken mentioned, the initial crosswalk was placed last year, back in July. And since we installed the crosswalk, we received additional complaints about drivers finding the location a difficult location to negotiate because they're not necessarily becoming aware of the pedestrians. So
Sean, let me jump in. Thank you. I appreciate that. I only have 3 minutes, so I got to ask you a couple more.
Sure.
Okay, and now you realize that more stuff is needed. Why wasn't that realized at the initial time of installation? What studies, what plans were done at the initial point of installation in July?
Let me add that in general, we try incremental steps in implementing traffic safety improvements. In general, we don't put in crosswalks on signalized intersections. At this location, we found because of all the information that Ken went over, there was sufficient background to install the crosswalk to further emphasize.
Sean, I'm sorry, I only have my 3 minutes. Speaking of background information, why wasn't there a presentation like this made in July 2019? And as you were preparing for that initial installation and the updates that you're making now, have you looked at any of the plans that the MCC and the county have spent 10 years working on?
Well, we looked at this location as a simple traffic safety solution, as opposed to a more, general improvement for the entire corridor. This is a very sensitive corridor for transportation management. We have,
John, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But Sean, now you put in an installation, you've upgraded it several times, and it's still going to be.
No, we haven't upgraded it several times. We installed a crosswalk that has proven very safe since we installed it.
You had to expand it because
trying to improve it.
Sean, it was not even up to your own standards. You had to come out and repaint it the proper width. So then you added signage.
As I said, in traffic engineering, we implement incremental steps to provide for traffic safety. We implement something, we find it working, and this location has worked. We haven't had any situations, any collisions.
That's not true. That is not true. We have eyewitness accounts. There have been collisions because of this crosswalk. Sean, the last question I need an answer.
I have checked with the highway patrol. We have all the information that we have collected so far. Everything seems to be working well. We are trying to enhance it. Now, if you want to discuss it offline, I'd be happy to discuss it with you since you only have 3 minutes.
So last question, yes or no, please, Sean. Did Caltrans look at any of the plans that the MCC and the county developed over the last 10 years?
There are two different things we are talking about. We are talking about immediate improvements to address community concerns, and there are things we can do in the future to improve the entire corridor in terms of the general development that takes place throughout the corridor. So we're talking about two different things. And since you have 3 minutes, I'd be happy to talk with you.
I think it's a simple yes or no question.
I did answer it, I think.
I don't think so. Thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Let's go to Sid Young next. Sid, you're on mute, it looks
Sorry, I
like.
didn't realize this. Okay.
Okay.
I had a
3 minutes.
statement first, and that is thank you for putting those flashing lights at the crosswalk, because I also disagree that there have been incidents. I won't say an accident, but I've been driving like 3 or 4 car lengths behind a car up front at night, and suddenly everybody came to a halt, but you couldn't tell it was because there was someone in the crosswalk because there were cars in front of you. So I like the fact that these flashing lights are a little higher and taller than like a grade level light that someone else suggested. The other thing is there is only one street light in all of Moss Beach. I guess it's the one you say the county put in with their crew, but Montera has 7. And when you're passing through that area, which doesn't have businesses on either side of the road the way we do, you can see clearly when people are out there, pedestrians are in the roadway. So I was just going to say that I appreciate the fact that you guys are going to put in another light. It would be nice if it was more of an amber glowing light bulb, though, because we don't really like to have a whole bunch of glaring lights, as Dan suggested. But thank you for addressing this, because I do think it's very dangerous. My other question doesn't really relate to this crosswalk, but there has been a lot of talk about maybe getting an acceleration lane northbound from Cypress. Are you able to comment on that?
I can't comment on that latter issue, but I do really appreciate your comment. You know, in our business, it's all about balancing the various needs, you know, in each community.
I agree.
Obviously, lighting adds a lot of safety benefits, but at the same time, there are other issues that come into place. And, you know, we really want to work with the local community and the county in figuring out what the solutions are. There are immediate things that we can do, as we have done, and there are longer term things that we can work towards. And
thank you.
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sid, and thanks, Sean. Kimberly, you're next. Kimberly Williams. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my connection is a little spotty. So I have 1 comment and 2 questions. My comment is that the safety lighting has been mentioned already, and I'm wondering if any lighting would be dark skies compliant to preserve the night sky. San Mateo County is not very good at doing that, and neither is Caltrans. So I'd like to encourage lighting that is sensitive to that issue, and similar to what others have said. And then the other, and if you could actually answer that when I'm done, that would be great. And then the other question I have is, there are flags there now for people crossing. Will those flags remain so that pedestrians in the middle of the crosswalk are holding a flag? And then my last comment is regarding the speed limit. I recognize that you are only a piece of lots of Caltrans projects. But the speed limit has been discussed, at least from my knowledge, since 2007 in relation to Connect the Coast Side. And many people in the community would like the speed limit lowered. It's not uncommon to see people flying through there at 70 miles an hour, and that is definitely not safe. I'm seeing more and more families with children cross as more families have moved into the neighborhood, and it is not a safe thing to have cars going at high speed. And generally, you lower the speed limit, and people, if you lowered it to 45, people might go 50. Right now, it's at 50, and people go 60 and 70. So I think that's something important to think about. It encourages people to slow down more. And then the last thing about that is that you yourself said that pedestrians have a hard time crossing at that juncture, and lowering the speed limit would help that tremendously. So I guess if you could just answer the question about the flags and the lighting, that would be great. Thank you.
As far as the lighting level, we rely on the national standards for safety lighting. We have some flexibility about the intensity of the light, and certainly we can work with the community to adjust that as long as it meets the national standard. In terms of the flags, at the location, I have to double check on that because I don't think our standards allow for that. I'm not sure how they are placed there. I can check into that. In general, if they're there and the county has, maybe endorsed it, maybe we can look into it. It's not these flags, I don't think are an adopted traffic control device. It may give a little extra sense of safety to the pedestrians crossing. And if it's beneficial to keep them there, we can look into that to keep them there. As far as the speed limit issue, again, it goes back to what Hong said earlier. We are required to set the speed limit at the 85th percentile. We do have maybe some flexibility by reducing it by 5 miles per hour, and we can look into that again. But even if we put up a speed limit for a reduced speed limit, it's not gonna change conditions unless the users of the highway recognize the necessity to reduce the speed. These are the residents, these are the visitors, these are the people who have business to do there. And if they're not abiding by that safe speed limit, it doesn't matter what speed limit sign we put out there. So to answer all your 3 questions, I think we can look at all 3 of them and see what we can do for you out there.
Okay, great, thanks. Dolores Silva.
Hello. Again, I appreciate the effort, but frankly, prior studies would have told you this is probably the wrong location. I've lived here for 30 years, but I live on the east side of the highway. In fact, I live on the northeast side of the highway, and I can tell you that in the 30 years, I have never crossed at Virginia. And I think most of my neighbors on this east side never crossed down there. If we're gonna go across, we're gonna go to the lighthouse, or we're gonna go down to the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve typically, and then from there you might go on a hike down by the bluffs and whatever. And so we cross at I have never crossed at Virginia, and I think this is the wrong location. And perhaps part of the reason that that you consider this a success so far is because nobody uses it. You'd be terrified to cross there. So I think that the crosswalk was put in place as a knee-jerk reaction, perhaps, but without the right studies, as Chris Johnson tried to point out. And now we're trying to make it better, but I still would never go down there. I'm going to cross closer to where it makes sense. And even the people that live further back on the east side of the highway, they kind of avoid some of that area because it just it doesn't make sense. It's not taking them where they want to go. Maybe Kimberly could speak to how it is for people crossing on the other side of the street. I'm not exactly sure where Kimberly lives, but people come over to go to the post office and to go to the grocery store and maybe to the kids' part. California would probably work better for all of that. So fundamentally, I think it's in the wrong place, and I don't think it's going to get used as much. And I still think it's going to be very dangerous for all the reasons that people have mentioned. So the speed limit is too fast. We need either an underpass or an overpass, or for it to be someplace else. Thank you, and that's it for me.
Thank you for your comment. I think it does highlight the challenge that we have as transportation professionals to balance the various needs of all of our customers. Obviously, every driver has a different sense of what's the safe speed limit. Every highway user has a different sense of where it is safe to cross the road, where it's convenient to drive the road. But unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of accommodating everyone's needs. This location seemed to serve the most of everyone's needs because of the various things that were at play. And I think Ken's presentation kind of identified those. This is a location where there was existing lighting. That lighting was there for a purpose because there were probably crossings that were taking place. There is commercial use. There is, other kinds of use that, generates the pedestrian movement. It should be considered one of the safer locations because it's right near a sheriff's station. So people would be more than careful, crossing and speeding through that location. So, I understand what you're saying. It's difficult for us as a transportation service provider to accommodate everyone's needs at the same time. We have to make a decision for something that works for the majority of the people, and we would hope that others can find it, beneficial. Maybe they can change their personal, route to, instead of crossing wherever they cross, find it a little safer, have a pedestrian activated light here that adds to their safety as they cross the road. It's a little inconvenience, but I would hope that, for the sake of the entire community, it works out for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Sean, and thanks, Dolores, for your questions. Let's go to Crystalline from the Half Moon Bay Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this is about the 6th or 7th Caltrans presentation that I've seen over the last couple of months, and they're very disheartening. I really feel like these presentations come across as Caltrans has made some decisions in their office completely unchecked with what our community is about and what our area is and what is good for our community. And the fact that I just heard that the crosswalk project has been done incrementally from essentially the unsafest possible version, and we're just going to incrementally try to make it safer based on the number of accidents that may or may not happen, is quite disturbing to me. That is the approach that would be taken. Basically, playing with people's lives as they try to cross a freeway is insanity to me. And then to add to that, that also what it feels like I'm hearing, and I apologize if I misunderstood, but that the cars set the pace of what the speed limit is going to be. I'm sorry, I believe that if I see a speed limit sign that says 45, it is my duty as a driver to go 45. And it's been set to 45 because of the safety of the surrounding area. So I find that a hardship to change the speed limit to accommodate this crosswalk that's been put in just seems like it should be a no-brainer, and that it's a problem seems very disturbing. And again, it feels like these decisions are being made in an office nowhere near the coast side without real proper thought to our community. Thank you.
Let me quickly address that. I really appreciate your comment regarding us making decisions from a distance away from the community. I want to apologize to the community for that. It may be true to some extent. We at Caltrans are going through an evolution in terms of what we are doing. For many years, our customers, many folks like yourselves, have asked us to accommodate auto traffic, and that's what we've done. We've built roads that connected communities, and as our communities have grown, the roads haven't kept up with that. And the way it is, these are some of the challenges that we are facing. We are trying to shift our focus from an auto-centric focus into something that also accommodates pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users. But it all goes back to what the community wants and does. We at Caltrans don't control land use. The local communities do. And we find ourselves in reactive mode. And the reason for the incremental steps that we take for traffic safety is very simple. We don't have the resources as a state, as a local agency to deal with all of the different needs that we have to provide for transportation safety. So we come up with these procedures, these processes that allow us to do the best that we can do. It is disheartening to have to wait for a reactive process to make an improvement. But that's what we're dealing with because we don't have the resources to do everything that it takes. It's just like, many of us feel at our family levels. We are in need of a lot of things. We don't have the resources to deal with them. And in terms of the speed limit, again, that is what the California Vehicle Code requires us to do. We do have some flexibilities, and in the areas that we can, that we have the luxury of, we can try to be a little more flexible and maybe reduce the speed limit by 5 miles per hour. And again, I'll commit to the community to do that for this location. But it's a question of whether our customers, the drivers who use the road, are going to be responsive to that. We don't want to create a situation where we set a speed limit that folks find it unreasonable, folks find it unpractical or impractical, and create a situation where we have a lot of violations and it creates another burden for some other agency and as such. So I hope I answered and addressed your issues.
Thank you, Sean. I wanted to dive in here a moment and explain to people who've not been through this why that 85% rule exists. It grew out of the days of old when local towns, in particular small towns, would create speed traps by setting speed limits that were artificially low. And it is, as the Caltrans folks have said, it is embedded in the California Vehicle Code. It is not an easy thing to get around. The last speed study that was done did show that perhaps it could be dropped to 45. And I'm glad to hear that the Caltrans team will look into that again. But the only way to substantially drop the speed limit is to redo a roadway configuration and traffic calming. And that is why you sometimes see towns, counties, et cetera, redo roads in such a way that traffic is forced to slow down, because then you can drop the speed limit. And whether you like the rationale behind that law or not, it is the law. The CHP has explained this to the MCC in the past, as has Caltrans, as have the county sheriff. It is not an easy thing to bypass. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I see several people still have their hands up, including members of the council. I think in the interest of time, we do have to move quickly. So let's go around and just have each member of the council have like 1 extra minute to ask any additional questions or make any comments. Let's start with Claire.
2 things really quick. I think people are using the crosswalk. I live like 2 blocks from it. I see more and more people all the time. I do think people are getting used to it, and I think it will help. The other thing is looking at, I always like to look at the town of Davenport on Highway 1 in Santa Cruz County, which has a, 35, 40 mile an hour speed limit going through the town. And they've managed to set it up with all kinds of warnings and flashers and bad reputations so that it works. People do slow down. So I encourage you to look at that. I understand all the laws and everything, but it can be done.
Great, thanks, Claire. Dan?
I see a community member with their hand up, Kimberly Williams. Can we let the
Why don't
community?
you speak first, and then we can go back to her if we have time. We're running really late on the agenda. 1 minute, Dan.
I think it's important to have a full discussion here. So I will go ahead. I'm really not pleased with this project. Is it a done deal? Is that the position of Caltrans? Because it seems like there was not sufficient studies. Is this a done deal? There's been requests for underpass studies. Is this a nail in the coffin for that? Does anybody from Caltrans can respond?
John, can you respond to that?
Yes, I would say we look at this as an immediate response to community concerns. If
Okay,
there
thank you.
is,
All right.
if there is other stuff we can do in the future, we'd be happy working with the community to do that.
So what's to stop people from hitting the button and just immediately walking out and muscling their way across, forcing people to slam on their brakes? What's to stop the unsafe situation of what I just explained?
It takes the community to address that. It takes all of us as users of the highway to share the road.
What's Caltrans going to do to educate the community? Because I have witnessed in a number of occasions where users hit the button and they just walk right out and they think that they're done. Thank you, Len. My time is not up. I'm asking some important questions. This is a very important issue for the community. What is to, you're just going to hope and pray that people use the crosswalk responsibly? Is that Caltrans' position?
Well, again, I would think we would all need work together to educate everyone to share the road.
But you're building
Caltrans,
You're building it.
We at Caltrans are doing what we can to address a situation to the best of our ability. We rely on all of our partners, including the community, to recognize that I need to teach my kid to tell them to push the button, wait for the vehicle to come to a stop, and then cross. And if it takes more than one pushing the button, they should do that. I tell my kid to drive in a way so that if there's a pedestrian at that intersection, they need to stop. So that's all we can do. We need to work with the highway patrol. We need to work with the sheriff to get that point across. It takes all of us. It's not just Caltrans. We all use the road. We all need to share the road, whether we are in the car, whether we are crossing the road, whether we are on a bike.
Well,
Okay,
I believe
thank you. Dan, your time is up.
Unsafe situation. Under the circumstances, I think that you should do further studies and lower the speed limit before you do any more work there.
Thanks, Dan. You've made your point. Okay. So Kimberly is going to pass. We messaged separately. So that is actually the last comment on this agenda item. In the interest of,
I have one.
Oh,
you didn't
okay,
go around to me.
I thought I went around to you the first time, but we weren't going around again. I was just calling on people.
I just have a really quick statement to
No,
make
that's
Mr.
fine.
Nazari, very quick, that many of the things you said tonight are very inaccurate. And if you would work with this council, which is exactly what this community council is for, we could have worked with you and given you helped you with where to put this crosswalk and at least involve the community, which you so seem to need. But in the future, because we are the entire Mid-Coast, you're going to be working on a crosswalk down in Miramar. If you include us, this council and the community, you won't have this bitterness that you have tonight. We can work together. You're including the sheriff, the CHP, include us. Thank you.
We will certainly do that. Thank you for that comment.
That's a great point, Barbara. And just in wrapping up, what I wanted to say is that, I know it's This was done initially without any input from the community, and it made a lot of people pretty unhappy. We felt like it was a really unsafe situation to have that crosswalk just thrown out there. There have been incremental improvements made. I know that we have the temporary signs out there. Additional painting, striping was done at one point. I appreciate Caltrans coming to this meeting tonight and taking this feedback from the community. As Barbara said, like there's a certain level of bitterness because things were done without any community input initially. So I think that we can start to work together, and I hope that Caltrans will listen to some of this feedback, and we can, in future projects, that things won't just be done without getting input from the community. So thank you. Len, did you want to say any last thoughts?
Oh, no, I thought you covered it very well, Michelle.
Okay, great. So that's the end of that agenda item. We're running about 36 minutes behind. Item 4B is also related to Caltrans, and this is about the traffic operational systems improvement project. This is actually, I'm going to go ahead and present on this along with Claire. Let me share my screen and give some background here. So actually on the October 28th meeting, we talked about this project. This is the project to have a number of improvements to the entire coast, but the areas that affect us include 2 new signs that would be located kind of between El Granada and Moss Beach, as well as some additional sensors and things that would be put in the roadway. At the October 28th meeting, we did approve a letter to Caltrans stating how we felt about the plans, and the fact that we really wanted we were opposed to various aspects of the sign, especially the fact that the signs were going to be used for like traffic information and events and things like that. We really only wanted the signage to go in if the signs were there for emergency purposes only. So actually on November 2nd, I believe it was, Len and I met with Caltrans, and Caltrans responded, to the comments very quickly, and actually stated that they would address all of the concerns that we raised in that October 28th letter. And so what I have to share tonight is a letter, and I will actually just post it to the screen, share my screen, and then read through it quickly. 1 second. And so actually this is the letter that I drafted along with Claire about in response to the feedback that Caltrans has shared. Caltrans also did send a letter in response to the meeting that we had on November 2nd, and I believe that has been posted to the website under tonight's agenda. So people can go and read through that, but here is the letter that I'm proposing to send in response. So we appreciate the changes that Caltrans has made to the SR1 Traffic Operational Systems Improvements Project in response to the MCC's letter dated October 28th. This letter summarizes the changes agreed upon and the Council's approval of the project as revised. The overall purpose of the project has been reconsidered to concentrate on safety-oriented traffic management, including a focus on emergencies. The variable message signs on the Midcoast will be reserved for critical advisories such as evacuation instructions, incident information, and tunnel or road closures. They will not be used for non-emergency communications such as travel time, weather advisories, or local events. The signs will be off most of the time, and a dark sky friendly approach will be used. If it is necessary to light the signs at night, a dimmer will adjust the brightness for the surrounding conditions. Because the variable message signs will need to operate in an emergency where power may be out, they will include emergency battery backup power. Finally, we look forward to working with Caltrans to determine the ideal locations for the variable message signs, including potentially relocating the 2 VMSs to more developed locations on the Midcoast rather than the proposed locations at Coral Reef Road and south of Moss Beach, locations 5 and 6. Thank you for responding to the concerns stated in our previous letter, and we look forward to working together on this in future projects. So that's the proposed letter. First, let's go around to members of the council with any questions. Or Claire, did you want to say anything? We'll go to you next.
I want to say two things. One is the letter that we received, I guess, today from Caltrans saying just what you just said, Michelle, but on their stationery was invaluable to me. I didn't want us to be the only ones saying this because I wanted something in writing from them saying they agreed, and now we have it. I feel so much better. The other thing is some of you were listening to the Half Moon Bay City Council meeting last night, in which I gave them an update on our decision on this. And they spent the next hour discussing what if they wanted to revise their view of these signs and look to us for some guidance, for some, not exactly guidance, but as a model for how to start looking at this differently, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
they will probably want to coordinate with us.
Awesome. Okay. How about Dave next?
I'm skeptical it will stay this way because that's how they started out with all the other VMS and CMS signs. But between the discussion and their letter to us, I think this is as good as we're going to get, and it's worth trusting them enough to see that if it works or not. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Barbara?
Wow, this is like a total turnaround from what they said they were going to do. So this is awesome. It's great. But like Dave, I'm
skeptical.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Dan?
Yeah, I'm not really pleased with the letter or the movement forward with this. It looks like the signs are going to continue to be the same size, and I want to bring everybody's attention that originally the larger CMS signs across the state were originally supposed to be only used for emergency purposes, and now they're being used for time travel, for advertisements, for etc. So I really don't care what is in the Caltrans letter or the agreement. I do not want to see the signs installed, period, as designed. I think that they can provide emergency safety with a smaller sign, another method. I don't like moving forward with this. Does not have my approval, and that's all I have to say right now.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Len?
So I want to say that I believe, I'm going to ask Caltrans this directly, that we're one of the first rural roads to consider this type of sign, that they've been prevalent on the freeways. And our reaction was strongly against that type of operation. So they were clear they're looking for one that's visually more appropriate and willing to work with us on that and recognize both the lighting and the placement issues. I also want to point out that 10 years ago, when we had our safety and mobility studies, which were funded by Caltrans, I was out of the community planning group, and they supported us well in contact with Caltrans, but we learned into that process that it's the operations group that really drive things in detail. And so in the last 2 months, either in meetings like this or other meetings, that there's been at least 5 with Caltrans operation people involved. So I want to emphasize what Sean is saying, in that it does represent a major shift in Caltrans' connection to the community. That's what I have to say.
Great, thank you. Let's go to members of the community now, starting with Chris Johnson.
Thanks, Michelle. Wow, I don't really know how to play the optimist role or the positive role, so I'll give it a shot here, because even though I had a mini rant at Caltrans earlier in the meeting, I'm not in favor of these signs. I feel that this letter is amazing. It's well stated. Okay, so as Claire said, you have this information from Caltrans on their stationery. So this is recapturing the commitments that they have made in a public forum that is very clear. And again, like I would not, if it was my preference, I would not want to have any lights. But to me, this letter strikes the right tone. It succinctly recaps the agreement so that everybody understands what it is. And if there is a problem in the future, it'd be pretty clear whether that agreement was followed or not, per Dave's concerns and Barbara's as well, which I hear that. The tone of this letter is great. In my opinion, that means it's a firm letter. And the recapping of the agreements is a message in itself. Hey, this is what we agreed on. This is what we're doing. I like that more resolute tone from the MCC regarding what some agreements are going to be, specifically with as we think about the last agenda item. And then to me, again, I would not want these signs, but I feel like this is a pretty good outcome. I hear Barbara and Dave's concerns about whether it will be lived up to. We'll see. But if it is lived up to, I think this is a pretty acceptable outcome in the big picture. And that is that this is governance. This is the way government works. You don't get every single thing you want all the time. And I think that this is a reasonable compromise, given that these signs are coming here sooner or later, whether it's now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So you've got a great agreement here. I don't want the signs, but I support this letter. And I'm really, really proud of the MCC for this particular letter. I just think this is what the MCC is here to do for the community. Thank you. And thanks for letting me comment.
Thanks, Chris. Kimberly Williams.
Hi. So I, first of all, I would say that this letter is not a formal agreement. And I'm a little disappointed that you're looking at it as a formal agreement, because it is not. This project, my understanding is that it is a grant-funded project that has specific goals and parameters. And that paperwork and those goals and those parameters would need to be altered for this project to conform to what you are asking. And I haven't seen that. And I think you should ask for that, because there's nothing to keep them from hooking you in and going down this road. And then after a year, then they do what they want to meet their grant goals. So I guess my question to you is, how will you ensure that this doesn't go that way? How will you ensure that they comply with the needs and expectations of the MCC on this project? And then the other thing I would say is that these signs are not a done deal. They are not necessarily coming in the future. These are urban solutions. They are signs for urban landscapes. They are very large. They have nothing to do with this rural area. And I'm especially disappointed because we do need an emergency plan and an emergency strategy. And latching on to this particular thing to meet that need is misplaced, because what you really need to do is look at the context of what we need in this community, an emergency plan and strategy, and look at solutions within that context, and not look at little piecemeal things that weren't meant for that purpose, because you won't end up with the goal that you're seeking. And the last thing I would say is that this project is just, it just floors me, because Caltrans has shown that they are not trustworthy. And I think last night I heard the same thing from Councilmember Ruddock, in that she also has grant experience with grant projects. And her comment was that, yes, grant projects are specific, and sometimes using money for something from a grant just to use the money is not worth it. Just to spend money that's there for something not to get what you really are seeking is not really a solution. So I do not support this letter, and I don't support these signs as a member of the community. And I look at that sign every day in Moss Beach and I think, oh, we may see 3 or 4 or 5 of these along the highway in the future. And it's just dismal. So I appreciate your attempt to compromise, but I'm questioning why we feel we need to compromise and go with this project instead of going for what we really are seeking, which is an emergency solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Let's go to Greg Dieguez next.
Kimberly, I wish you would stop stealing what I'm going to say. That would be my major comment. And I do applaud your initiative. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great, Michelle, that you and Claire met with these folks and had a productive dialogue. But the proper context is an evacuation solution, whether it's shelter in place or evacuation. So there's a little good that could come out of this, but boy, it would sure be better to have an overall statement of what our evacuation needs are, and then this comes into play. One minor comment I would make, and it's great that you put in the battery backups, but they presumably will also need a wireless connection. And so I guess I have concerns that it needs to be specified that something's got to be done with the communications infrastructure. I know over at Montero Water and Sanitary District, they've talked about trying to do something to improve our wireless signal here. Maybe now they've plowed the top off Montero Mountain, we'll be able to get better reception. I don't know. But there is a concern on my part that we don't have reliable wireless, and that presumably is how these things are going to be triggered, and that needs to be taken into account in this planning. Thanks.
Greg. Michelle Dragony, you're next.
SMC Alert is the go-to for OES, Sheriff's Office of Emergency Systems, and we would prefer everybody go there and sign up. Yes, if cell towers go down, you're a bit, but we've got a whole plan with the CERT. I'm a CERT trainer, Community Emergency Response Team. It's a FEMA program. And we have ham radio operators, we have walkie-talkie people, we have neighborhoods that are connected, and I think we're good to go. I'm not sure that we need more signage. I would prefer people go to SMC Alert because that's vetted by the San Mateo County sheriffs and also the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you. I see we have a couple more hands raised. We have from members of the council, but then we have Sid Young too. Go ahead, Sid.
Going to be brief. Michelle, when the fire was on the Crystal Springs Reservoir, 92 is closed in both directions. SMC Alert never sent out one single text. So I would not object to having 2 or more forms of letting us know when you can't get out of your evacuation route, or if you're stuck somewhere in traffic because of a fire in a semi truck blocking both sides of the road. So thanks.
Thank you, Sid. Looks like, okay, so we're going to have council comments, but first I would call for a motion to approve the letter.
I move we approve this
I'd like
letter.
to make a motion.
Oh, thanks. So we have Len and then Barbara. Do you want a second?
No, Len, let me make my last motion. My last one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll
So
make
we
a
have motion from
the letter.
Barbara. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Len? All right, let's go around and have comments from the council then. Let's start with Barbara. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm going to agree with Sid. I have a hard time trusting the San Mateo County, the alert system. 3 weeks ago, I got stuck with 92 being closed all day and sat for almost 3 hours, never got an alert the entire time it was closed. The same thing about the fire. I would very much appreciate a sign that's run by somebody other than the sheriff's department, so we have two ways of communicating if there's an emergency. Um, I do agree that the way this was explained to us, it was a grant and it was pretty specific, but I know that they do want these monitoring things that monitor the traffic. They want those, and that's kind of their main focus. So I think that whatever we can use to communicate with people down here, I'm in favor of. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Let's go to Dan next.
Yes. So, as I've said before, I'm not in favor of this project at all. I do not believe it's been properly, effectively weighed in by the community in whole. I think it's against, as it was brought up earlier, it's more of an urban solution, and we are not an urban environment. And I think it's an attack on our small town feel, the rural feel, the countryside feel. I just don't believe that it's appropriate. I think that a different project could be better at a lower impact, a lower scale, and still provide the sufficient emergency notice. I agree with a lot of the community members that have also felt that it's it's not appropriate. So I'm going to vote no on approving the letter, and I'll stop there.
Thanks, Dan. Dave, let's go to you next.
In general, I'm still not in favor of this, but I have been swayed by the spirit of compromise, the fact that a number of council members have asked for more aids to emergencies, and a lot of community outreach asking for emergency signage. So while I am personally opposed, I will vote for the letter.
Your view,
sorry, Len, please, next.
I support the letter, and in particular, I want to point out to the community, as I said initially, I think this type of sign in our location is a first for Caltrans, and I believe from their comments in a meeting and in the letter that they're willing to work with us on how to make a sign that better fits that goal. So I'm for it.
Thank you. Claire, did you have anything else to say?
Yes, I'm listening to what everybody else has said, and I am taking it to heart. I do think that we need to stay on top of this compromise agreement. Obviously, we can't enforce it, but we can certainly stay on top of it and make sure that we continue to have input and oversight. We are going to need to figure out, as we work it with them further, exactly how the input for the information on these signs is generated, whether it's from the county or the CHP or Caltrans or some consortium thereof. We dealt with this when we had the tunnel closure. We began talking about that, and I think we need to continue to talk about how that emergency information is put together. And everybody has heard me talk about, or some people have heard me talk about this before. I'm hoping that we can use the spirit of good feeling with Caltrans to parlay into getting better guardrails on the slide.
Yeah, Claire, good point on that. Just quick aside on that, we did briefly speak about that with Caltrans, and we need to get back to them on the actual locations where there have been cars that have gone off the road. and they will, they've committed to at least pursuing a conversation about guardrails between Montera and the tunnel. Okay. I see Michelle Dragony raised her hand again. We've finished the public comment portion. But so I think it's too late.
I think we should honor a community member that wants to speak, please.
I hear you. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and write your comments in the chat rather than speak them?
I would like to hear them. I think the rest of the community would
I
like
hear
to
that you do, but we're also running late on time. So I need to kind of keep us on the agenda. We're already 40 minutes late now. So, I want to keep going with this. Let's go ahead. So there has been a motion on the table to approve the letter. I'm going to have Claire call the roll.
Okay, we're voting on the motion on the table. Len?
Yes.
Dan?
No.
Barbara?
Mute, Barbara.
Yes. Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
I vote yes. It's 6-1 in favor. 5-1 in favor.
5-1. Great. Okay, so the letter passes and we'll send that to Caltrans. Okay, thanks everyone. Let's go on to item number 4C, which is emergency evacuations. Len, I think you are going to be leading this item, so could you kick it off?
So this is our fourth in a series of presentations that relate to wildfires and evacuation. So we have with us Jonathan Cox to give us that presentation, and I will turn the presentation over to him.
Well, thank you, Len, and nice to be here this evening with everybody. My name is Jonathan Cox. I'm the Deputy Chief for CAL FIRE San Mateo Division. That includes Coastside Fire Protection District out there on the coast. I was a captain in Half Moon Bay before I promoted. Worked in all the stations, all three of them, including Station 41 and 44 in El Granada and Montera. Today, I'm really just going to speak to you about what we're working on and what we have been working on really over the last 18 months as far as countywide evacuation planning goes. And I know this is a hot topic statewide at the moment. I've had the unfortunate experience of being on the Tubbs fire, the Camp Fire, the CZU fire, the fires down in Southern California, and time again have seen the impacts of evacuations, evacuation planning and management, and really have been one of the people spearheading the effort to really standardize and have a more methodical approach to how we evacuate in San Mateo County. And one of those areas that's extremely important is on the coast. So Len, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Do you think you can allow me to share my screen?
You should be set up, Jonathan. If it doesn't work, let me know.
It's saying the host disabled participant sharing. I have two screens up, maybe the issue.
Okay.
I'm getting my Zoom's money worth tonight.
All right. Now both of you are co-hosts.
There we go. All right. Let's just go with my screen. And let's start by doing this. Can everyone see this one?
It's just about up.
Not yet.
Oh, okay. It should be coming up any second.
I see that it started, but it hasn't yet shown up. There you go.
There we go. Okay. I'm just going to scroll through this, really get back to the beginning on it. 1 second. Thank you for your patience. Okay, it's coming. So really, before I get started, I'll just kind of give you an assessment of kind of what's going on across the state at the moment. I know everybody has been seeing all the fires that have been occurring, and I know that you've had some speakers, including Rich Sampson and others. Just a little bit about us. Everyone probably knows CAL FIRE is the fire provider in the coast. CAL FIRE protects about 70+% of San Mateo County geographical area. That includes all of the county fire unincorporated areas, as well as Coastside Fire Protection District and San Mateo County Fire Department. So we not only have the wildland fire protection in the county, but we also have the structural and EMS component for a large majority of the more remote parts of the county. With that, you know, we've all experienced this year what we've come to term every year with is the fact that it was the worst fire season ever. And, you know, I think 5 years ago, if you would have said that we would have burned 4 million acres in California, you would have thought, or I would have thought someone was crazy to say that. But this year we had a historical number of fires, and we also had a historical number of acres burned, over 4 million and 8,000 plus actual fires. The unfortunate part of that is we've had 31 fatalities across the state due to wildland fires, and we've also had over 17,000 firefighters that have been deployed. That includes making requests to resources from other states, which is something that we've been doing more often, and obviously has a lot of implications that go along with it. And we've also had to use over 100 aircraft. So just how bad are things in the state right now? 15 of the top 20 destructive fires in California have occurred since 2015. That's pretty unheard of. You know, we keep statistics basically for the last just over 100 years, and to have 15 or a majority of those fires that have been the most destructive occur in the last 15 years just gives you an indication of what the trend is across the state. Just this year alone, we've had 6 of the 20th largest fires in California, and the largest fire in California history occurred this year at over 1 million acres up in Mendocino County, essentially burning about 97% of the Mendocino National Forest. The next slide that's coming up is just to give you a perspective of what it looks like when you look at the geography of things. On the left is a photo from kind of the western U.S. In the beginning of September, and you can just see kind of how extensive the fires were. And on the right, you're just looking at basically the last 5 years in the North Bay. So that is the Napa, Sonoma, and Lake County areas of California. You can see a large majority of it is burned, and areas that have burned 5 years ago have started to reburn. So just the scale and scope of the fires that we've experienced have been fairly catastrophic and unheard of. Obviously, everyone lived through the lightning storm this year that came through California. Over 12,000 strikes that came through the Bay Area. A direct hit was in San Mateo and Santa Cruz counties. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but we essentially had more acres burn in San Mateo and Santa Cruz counties in a 24-hour period than we had than occurred in the last 100 years combined. And that's really because of these 27 fires that we had across the area, which was a result of those 12,000 plus lightning strikes. Of those, you'll remember the 3 largest occurred really in San Mateo County and pushed southerly into Santa Cruz County, and it got all deemed the CZU complex for the fact that we named the fires a complex when we have multiple fires in the same geographical area. I'm not going to go too much detail into the CZU complex because I know you've heard quite a bit about it, but I just want to give a little bit of perspective on kind of the rate of spread that fires are burning right now. In 2017, the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa, it burned in a footprint that was almost identical to the Hanley fire of 1964. And that Hanley fire burned from Calistoga towards Santa Rosa, and it took about 3 days for it to get from the Napa Valley over into Santa Rosa. That fire burned just over 100 structures, and they were mainly cabins. If you fast forward 60 years, you have the Tubbs fire that occurred in 2017. That fire burned in 3.5 hours what the Hanley burned in about 3 days. And in that time, burnt over 5,000 structures as opposed to 100 structures. The rate of spread that we calculate the Tubbs fire at is about a football field a minute as far as how fast it was burning. Fast forward 1 year to the Camp Fire. The Camp Fire obviously burned in red flag conditions up in Butte County. We saw that fire burn at about a football field per second on that fire in Northern California. So, you know, these are just a couple points of example about the speed at which we're seeing fires burn in the state and kind of what we can anticipate locally should we or unfortunately get a fire. So to put it all together, everyone always asks what's going on, why are the fires getting so bad? Really, our perspective on this is there's two things going on. One is the fact that we have the climatic changes that are happening, and that is really just what the data shows us: is the weather is hotter, the weather is drier. We're getting poor fuel moisture recovery at night because of the the lower RHs, and that's changing our vegetation. But we also put that or combine that with the fact that we have suppressed fires in California for the last 100 years. So we've interrupted that natural kind of regime, that natural return interval for fire. And we have population at 40 million people across the state living in many of those areas, and we have aging infrastructure. And you take the climatic changes and you add in the human impacts that are going on the land, and you get this new reality, which is more fires that are more destructive, that are occurring more frequently, which is obviously what we saw this year. So what does this all mean for us on the coast and locally in San Mateo County? It really means this: is firefighting is becoming less and less effective under these extreme conditions. These are really multi-agency, multi-coordinated events where really strong coordination amongst agencies is critical to getting people to safety. With that, we are using larger incident management teams. And maybe most importantly, these fires now are turning into mass rescue or mass casualty incidents. And really evacuation orders are required earlier and over larger areas. Obviously, there's the systemic problems that come along with it, just the number of resources that we have to order and the kind of scale and depth and length of these fires. But we also have to start thinking about traffic congestion and coordinating traffic flows, like we saw in the Camp Fire when we try to put everybody on the road at once. And we also have to really focus on the fact that fire tends to impact the most vulnerable populations in our community the most. And that's really just born out of the science that if you look at the number of people who are injured or killed from these large fires, it's overwhelmingly those who are older or those who have some sort of pre-existing condition. So what can we do about it? One thing that we've identified over the last 18 months in San Mateo County is really just the need for really a cohesive approach and a strategy on evacuation planning. And what we were able to do is we were able to, at the leadership of the fire chiefs, the countywide fire chiefs from all different agencies, kind of come up with a platform to get on the same sheet of music when it comes to evacuations across the county. The County Board of Supervisors, specifically Supervisor Horsley, allocated $75,000 as a seed project, kind of as a moonshot to see what we could come up with. And myself and Matt Sampson from South San Francisco Fire and a few others were able to get an RFP for a evacuation management platform to be built to really allow everybody, regardless of agency across the county, to be on the same page. So the good news is this has come a long way in the last 18 months. We've collaborated with every other law and fire agency in the county, and we've really wanted to kind of showcase what we've come up with because it just went live this week in San Mateo County for all of the public to view. And if you go to this link here, myzone.zonehaven.com, you can actually see your zone about where you live. And this whole platform here is really for San Mateo County. We've developed this. And it's all about finding out where you live and how you can prepare. So if you come into myzone.zonehaven.com, you can easily click on the Find My Zone button, and it takes you to the countywide map now that is this standardized map for all of San Mateo County. And this map is growing. Other counties in the Bay Area have come on board. I think we're up to about just under 10 counties statewide who are getting on the platform, including our neighboring counties of Santa Cruz and Alameda. And I'll let this load. I'm sorry, my internet at my house tonight looks like it's a little bit slow. So if you come into this map, you can easily just search your address. So if I put in 555 Obispo in Half Moon Bay now, you'll see that the zone comes up that 555 Obispo is in. and it comes up with a whole bunch of details. It tells us that the status of that zone right now is normal, and I understand. I'm looking at the screen, and I know the presentation is delayed because of the internet, but I'll let it catch up here.
People can follow along at home and do this for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a super easy website to find, to the myzone.zonehaven.com, or if you want to come directly to the evacuation map countywide, it's just community.zonehaven.com. And on here, you'll see every single zone that's in the county. And all of these zones are correlated to the jurisdictional responsibility or the jurisdictional authority that is in that area. So for El Granada specifically, it is obviously the unincorporated area, so it's San Mateo County. When you get down south, you see some HMB numbers. That's because those are in the city of Half Moon Bay. Really important to see on here is these zones are split across basically down Highway 1. There's 2 main zones in El Granada. And this is literally just the public facing side. So you can come in here right now and you can see what zones in the county are under an evacuation order or a warning. And there are a couple of zones down in the far south part of the county that are under an evacuation advisory for mud and debris flow that could occur because of the fires that occurred this summer. They're still in an advisory status. So this is that one-stop countywide platform that we've developed with OES and sheriffs as well to really make sure that everyone's got the same place that they're going to. The other part of this is the other side of this map is the first responder side. And what the first responders have access to is a whole suite of information about intersections that need to be controlled when you evacuate a zone, what the current traffic conditions are, as well as key facilities in each zone, such as schools or hospitals or care facilities that may need extra attention when you get to those locations or get to those zones. So that's really the important part for us as first responders, is to all have that kind of democratized information at our fingertips across the county. We also have the ability to run models, the basic fire models that are out there that are widely adopted, to look at, based on fire conditions, what zones we need to evacuate in the next 1, 3, and 5 hours based on the weather. So that's a big advancement for us to be able to get in there and actually do some predictive analysis based on the data and see what kind of population, how many structures we have in there and whatnot. A couple things that are exciting about this project is we have built in with OES the zones into the SMC alert system. So we're trying to reduce that time from when we need a zone evacuated to the time an SMC alert comes out. We think this will have a big kind of reduction in that reflex time. We also have worked with Waze, the traffic app. So every time a zone gets either evacuated or closed, that will automatically populate on the zone traffic app now. It's the first collaboration between this platform, Zonehaven, and Waze. And that's something that's really exciting. I know Zonehaven is working with some other tech companies, including Airbnb. So people who maybe are from out of the area and visiting will get the information as well. But what we're really trying to do is centralize an evacuation management platform so that we can get the information out to the public quicker and give them specific information about where they need to go and where the emergency might be coming from. So just a few things to kind of wrap it up with. You know, the keys to success on evacuation are really obviously a county being signed up for SMC alerts, but also having more than one way out identified. How do you get out of your zone? The unfortunate part about disasters is they're not all the same, and they don't all come from the same direction. So a tsunami may have one way in and one way out. A fire may have a different way in and different way out. The other thing to think about with evacuations on the coast is if it is a fire coming from the east, we do have the ability to use some temporary evacuation points, such as the airport or the harbor, where we can actually take refuge while the fire passes. That I think is becoming more of a widely adopted conclusion based on what happened in the campfire. If you physically cannot get everybody down and out the roads in over 92, we are going to have to ride out the fires in some of the most opportune locations that have good clearance and a lot of open space. And that's really important to think about, especially if you don't get out early. Obviously having a go bag, and then obviously also checking with your neighbors, getting back to that vulnerable population piece, making sure that those who need the extra help get the help that they need, and checking on their neighbors. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a real brief run through of the application. I think you'll see it more and more now that it's become public. It's really exciting to have something to at least as a starting point to collaborate with all of our cooperators countywide, and also have the ability to communicate with the public about evacuations in a single platform.
Thanks, Jonathan. It was a good presentation. I'm going to go ahead and go around to members of the council first. I'm sure there will be lots of questions. Let's start with Dave.
No questions. I'll just say I watched Zone Haven a lot during the fires. I knew somebody who was down in Bonnie Doon, and Santa Cruz County was obviously part of this also. And I did see the ways integration. I saw roads closed as evacuations happened. So I'm very happy to see this happening and the level of integration that you guys have already managed to pull off. Thank you.
Great. Let's go to Barbara next.
I really don't have any questions. I think the community has a lot, so I'll pass. Thank you. But great presentation. Thank you.
Dan?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. You know, you gave a lot of time tonight with an overall summary of the California fires recent. But I feel that there was not a lot of discussion about, I'll call it infrastructure of evacuation. You did talk a lot about some tech-heavy answers to the problem. I understand that you also said that, and I agree with you, that our community needs more than one path to decide what they want to do, whether they want to run down to the beach under an extreme situation, or actually some people may need to really get out of here. Now, I wish that you kind of gave a little bit more talk about you know, what the highway needs to expect that there could be a good flow out of the area, whether that's having, you know, sheriffs at certain key intersections to keep traffic moving so it doesn't back up. You know, I think that type of planning is very important. Also, you know, I've said I'm against roundabouts because I feel that it's going to be a drip emitter of flow out of here. But I really think that, you know, I was hoping to hear more about infrastructure, you know, really highway infrastructure of how we can get out of here fast.
Do you have a specific question around that you want Chief Cox to answer?
Well, I'm going to leave it up to him. I'm going to leave it up to him. You know, the other thing that was a little bit concerning was the concept of just writing out a situation. So, you know, I don't believe that relying on technology is the answer. I think that we should be talking more about good infrastructure, making sure that you know, eucalyptus tree groves that are alongside the highway. You didn't talk about that should be cleared. to maximize the potential that the evacuation route will be open. So I'd like you to make some comments, however you feel. Jonathan, please.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple pieces I hear there, Dan. One is, we fight the fires and we make the suggestions about where those evacuation zones need to be. And then obviously law enforcement is responsible for the execution and the roadways. I'm close with Saul Lopez, the captain on the coast. And, like everything, he's limited by the number of patrol officers that he has out on the coast on any one day, right? So, the limiting factor is going to be the number of people, both on the highway patrol and the sheriff, who can control intersections. And if you look at the map that I have up right now, those purple.
There should be a plan in place so that people are called as needed. There should be a plan, and that's what I'm not hearing. I'm not really hearing. The whole item tonight was about evacuation, emergency evacuation, and I just don't. I'm just not hearing a good infrastructure plan. So, I'm sorry, but I think that that's part of it, is having a plan to have call out and because the ideal situation would be able to see this highway not become gridlock. We know it will, but for the early hours, we're hoping that the highway will flow under an evacuation situation.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That's exactly why we developed this platform.
Chief Cox, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
No, I think we're both saying the same thing. That's exactly why we developed this, is really to be able to see where that traffic is, so that we can have people go to those locations to secure those intersections. That's really the theory behind it, is using data and technology for good, because resources are limited.
Okay, let's move on to Len.
So you mentioned use of the harbor, the airport. I think both of those are large areas. And so I'm wondering, do you have agreements in place, both with the facilities to allow for rapid movement of cars into there, and either with the sheriff and highway patrol or other people who are capable of doing it, diverting traffic into there on short notice?
Yeah, that's a great question, Len. I don't know about the formal plans as far as agreements that we may have with them. All of the ones that I've been a part of have been very ad hoc and on the fly. And I do think that, speaking to the airport during the CZU complex, they were very accommodating for opening up and agreeing to potentially using some of the space if necessary. So no, I don't know of a formal agreement, but I do think that's a great idea to follow up with them.
Because what we're looking at here we're told El Granada is a high risk area, that this would be people moving out quickly in mass. And so you would need to have sort of an arrangement planned in advance with the airport to turn it on directly, not the sort of longer term place to put people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that whole idea of the, temporary getting somewhere if the fire conditions become so intense that Highway 1 or 92 become impassable.
Thank you.
Claire?
I was pleased with this. It's better than I expected it to be. I appreciate your saying that not all disasters or all emergencies are the same, that it requires a framework where you can adjust to what's actually going on. And I think this is a really good start. I appreciate it.
Okay, and I just have a couple questions around the actual communications that would go out. First is on on the emails. So I know for the CZU Lightning Complex fire, there was a place where you could go and sign up for emails with the latest information on those, or on the evacuations and different types of updates there. In a situation, it seems like something could arise so quickly that there's no time to go and sign up. Is that when SMC alert then steps in, or how do you guys go about ensuring that everyone is signed up for the appropriate communications, that they would be able to be notified via text or email during an evacuation?
Yes, it's a great question. There's a couple answers to it. One is SMC alerts is the format for getting out that information immediately. So all the zones that we were evacuating down in Butano and Pescadero and Lomomar, we were sending that information to OES, who was targeting those specific areas. So that would be the case in El Granada or the Midcoast. That information would come directly to those zones of where you're at. The sign up for instant information is really more of a long-term daily, if you want the daily update. But that immediate information is really coming through SMC alerts. Or if it's critical enough, something called a WIA, which is a wireless emergency alert, which is a little bit more broad, that the OES can send out when a disaster meets a certain threshold to really make sure they try to get to as many cell phones as possible.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that before, because I know that I think a year or two ago, Kevin Rose came and spoke to us and said that the number of signups, in our area for SMC alerts were pretty low, just in general. And so I was going to ask, like, is there any way to either get more people signed up for that? But it sounds like in the event of like a really urgent, if an urgent communication needed to go out, there's another way around it.
Yeah, there is. It's I'm not an expert in it because it's not my shop, but WIAs, which is a wireless emergency alerts, they hit a much broader area. They're not as targeted. There was a lot of work that were done to them after the Tubbs fire in 2017 because of kind of what they learned from it. And it's restricted to the number of characters it can use. And it's also a little bit dependent on cell phone capacity. So if a fire is blowing through there, the likelihood that you're going to have good cell reception obviously diminishes. So although it's another channel, it's not necessarily any more dependent based on what the disaster is.
Does San Mateo County also have reverse 9/11?
So that's a good question, and I don't know.
But I wanted to go to members of the community next.
Sorry, is that for me, that one?
I just butted in. If Michelle wants to go to the community, that's fine.
I think we lost Michelle. So as a member of the community, I'm going to interject myself here and ask a question. First, thank you. Thank you, Chief Cox. I don't expect you to have all the answers tonight. One of the companies I work with for part of my career was a specialist in computer system disaster recovery. And we were able, for example, to survive the 1989 earthquake and keep Franklin Templeton's mutual funds working without a hitch. The way we did that was a combination of redundancy and practice. So one question is, when are we going to practice? And again, I don't expect you to have the answer, but there needs to be practice. And you just touched on one of the points I was going to make. And in fact, your presentation illustrated it perfectly. You couldn't get the bandwidth to show your slides. So if we're relying on an internet, and as you mentioned, cell phone, I was going to bring up the question of would the fires obstruct the microwave towers and prevent the signals from going up? We really need to understand what's going to happen when the community surges its need. I'll bet it will choke the bandwidth. And we have other options, as Michelle was pointing out, with walkie-talkies and what the CERT teams can do, and more than I do about what the other options are. It might be worth considering, though, that we really need a major upgrade in our infrastructure, whether it be cell phones or home cable or whatever, in order for something this automated to even have a chance of functioning at peak demand, and that needs to be tested, and it can be simulated without asking everybody to log on. I think we got a problem there. So I would encourage you to look at and test for peak surge demand, and then to also consider things you just brought up. Is a fire going to melt some of the cables somewhere? Is the smoke going to cloud the microwaves, et cetera? So my last question would be, given that you're going through steps of preparing a plan, at some point, can we get from you what the task list is to finalize the plan and to deploy the plan for testing? That's what I would like to see. When are we going to have the tests?
Yeah, I think great questions. You know, this comes back to the fact that we're one cog in this wheel, right? We have the responsibility to suppress the fire. Sheriff has the responsibility to execute evacuations. Highway Patrol has the responsibility to hold the roadway. OES has the responsibility to notify and do mass notification. So I think from my perspective and my agency, you know, we are all about, you know, A, collaborating and being a team player with all the other agencies, but B, practicing whatever a disaster we need to simulate to see where the vulnerabilities are, or where we may need upgrades, because it is, you know, from my experience, evacuations are a sticky wicket, and they are very tricky under the best circumstances. So to try to do it under the worst is even harder.
Can make
So
recommendations.
can you at some point publish the task list or the project plan to finish the plan?
So I don't really understand the question. The punch list for which plan?
The task list for the evacuation plan that we're all going to have to live under. And maybe it isn't your responsibility. Maybe it's above you in the county level, because as you mentioned, it has to include other agencies. So who's going to produce the integrated plan involving all agencies and let us practice it?
Yeah. So, you know, I hate to defer to another agency, because it really sits with all of us, right? It sits with all of the emergency response agencies. You know, the platform we have right now is really a pretty big advancement to at least have zones and have identified intersections and have the ability to be talking the same language about what zones we want to get out. I don't think it changes what the reaction of the public is, which is having a plan, getting out early, knowing multiple ways out, and following the direction of the first responders for that disaster.
Thanks, Greg. And sorry, my internet went out earlier. I had to restart Zoom, but I'm back now, and let's call in Sid Young next.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I watched the virtual grand opening this morning too, and congratulations on that new station. I think Greg touched on a lot of the questions, but I'm going to put them in a different way. First of all, just thank you for getting on this. And I think it's my understanding that our first contact is going to be if we're registered with SMC Alert. That's how we'll know if our zone needs to be evacuated. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So then there needs to be some kind of public outreach to make more people be sure to sign up, because not everyone has cell phones. And that's how I get most of my SMC alerts. And I noticed that the Lightning Complex fire lasted at least 3 weeks. So standing on the beach, if there's a fire, waiting for it to pass might not be something that's going to fly in the long run. So I really hope that the county and CAL FIRE and all the other agencies will get together and look at this, because I've been, well, in January, they came out with the coastside, Connect the Coastside Traffic Mitigation Plan or something, comprehensive traffic plan. And it did not include any emergency routes or plan. So I've been going around to different departments, including I called you back in January asking, you know, who's got the plan. And they did say you were working on the Zone Haven, which I was very excited about. But also you've already mentioned that it's not just fire, it's going to be the CHP, the sheriffs, OES, and of course, county planning as far as traffic goes. Traffic what do you call it? Structure, infrastructure. Thank you. And so do you know if there's really a group of people meeting and working on an emergency evacuation plan? Because every time I ask, they all say that someone's going to be working on it, but I don't know that they're actively working on it. Do you know?
Yeah, so I know a couple things, Sid. I know one is we sent out an evacuation mailer maybe 18 months, 2 years ago for the El Granada community specifically about, identified routes and the best information for getting out. I do think, evacuations, although they can be practiced, and a lot of work can go into refining and making it better and better. They never go perfectly. I've never seen a perfect evacuation. And there's no single agency in charge, a blanket agency for evacuations, right? It really is that precipice of all agencies coming together.
But
And
every
I think,
time I've asked, they all seem to pass the football and say that another agency is working on it, but I never have heard that they're all working on it together. So do you know if they are?
so I can tell you from my perspective, I've worked on evacuation zones, just developing these zones and these plans with every agency on the coast. So I personally have been collaborating and know that the collaboration is happening.
Okay. Well, I guess it's something we need to still find out about. I was in Arizona
And
recently.
actually,
and
we're
I had my
we're
cell phone
Sid. We
going.
reached time.
I know, but let me just.
No, I think time's up, so we're gonna have to move on. Dan, it looks like you have another comment.
Can I ask about the blue alert first before he goes? I got one on my cell phone while I was in Arizona, and it was an Arizona alert. So is that like an Amber Alert or the I'm sorry, WEA as you were talking about?
Yeah, so that's probably their version of an Amber Alert through the wireless emergency alert system.
Thank you. Okay, Dan.
Yes. With regards to some of my earlier comments and Greg Diegas's comments, your response, Jonathan, was that there's many different agencies required to kind of see a good evacuation. Specifically, though, you have mentioned that there's collaboration, but specifically, you are able to bring some of these comments and suggestions and that you feel may be appropriate and suggest them and work them through the other agencies so that we can see the best possibility for evacuations. I just want to make sure that you're giving recommendations clearly. Please tell us that you are giving recommendations to the to the sheriff's department and to the county and to other agencies involved.
Yeah, Dan, 100%. I mean, we are at the table every time when we're talking about these evacuations, and I think the hard part for everyone is there's not one set plan for every single disaster, right? So it's all about understanding how I'm going to respond based on the different disasters, and that's something that we repeatedly bring up in these conversations with everybody: is does this work for a tsunami? Does this work for an earthquake? Does this work for a wildfire? But by all means, we're at the table working with the other agencies.
Would it be possible for you to share with us some of the general recommendations that you are providing?
Just general evacuation recommendations?
Yes, general recommendations for a clean evacuation.
Yeah, so I'm happy to. That last slide I was on my presentation was exactly that. What are the successes for evacuation? Happy to do that.
You're talking about the safe haven and the big tech help?
No, the last slide I brought up that mentioned kind of what leads to successful evacuations. Being signed up for SMC alerts, having more than one route identified, leaving early, having a go bag.
We're talking more specifically about infrastructure to the highway and making sure that it's clear. That's what I'm mostly concerned about. I think other people in the community as well. So
right.
What recommendations can you tell us now? And I understand you may not be able to, but if you can tell us now anything about your recommendations to make sure that there's a the best possible infrastructure of evacuation.
So I'm only given the hand that we're dealt when it comes to infrastructure, and I don't have any ability to dictate development and infrastructure.
Suggestions, right? Yeah, I'm talking about
Okay,
suggestions.
Dan, your time is up. Let's let Chief Cox respond, and then we're going to have to move on.
I just want to be clear so he understands what I'm asking. Suggestions to the other agencies to help with the infrastructure of getting, a clean evacuation.
Yeah, so Dan, again, we're not tasked with giving recommendations to another agency for what they should do with their infrastructure.
You just said you could.
No, so sorry, maybe there's a misunderstanding here. We're at the table talking about the zones that we're developing, where the zones need to be, what they need to be called, how they're going to work for different types of disasters. The highways are the highway patrol, the roads are the sheriffs. That is not, unfortunately, something that I control, and therefore I can't make recommendations for them on their actions or what they should be doing to their infrastructure. It sounds like, on the infrastructure side, whether it be trees on the roadway or, traffic lights, those fall under a whole number of different agencies as far as who has control of that.
I got it, that you're limited to the amount of recommendations you can make. I got that. Thank you.
Okay, and then we do have one other question typed in the chat from Jill Grant, so I'll just ask this as the last question of this section. Is there any other evacuation route besides Highway 1 or 92?
Those are the two main ones, north or south, really, if you're on the Midcoast in El Granada. That's the unfortunate reality.
Okay, thank you. Len, do you want to wrap up?
So, Chief Cox, I want to really thank you for your presentation. I think you've covered a lot of territory and answered the questions as best you can for now. I'm sure we'll pick this up again. We've had 4 talks of this type, and I'm expecting in our December 9th meeting that Supervisor Horsley will give some information to us on how his task force would begin to develop. So I think that's the next episode we'll get in our MCC meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chief Cox, for being here and for waiting through the other agenda items to get to your presentation. It was great.
Thanks.
Let's move on then to item 5, which is council activity. We're just going to go, we're going to start with Len. He has a couple items to update on, including Connect the Coastside and SMC Active Transportation Plan. And then if anyone else on the council has anything, we can go around. Go ahead, Len.
Sure, thank you. As far as Connect the Coastside goes, I'm having a wrap-up discussion with Joe Leclerc tomorrow just to feed him different pieces of feedback we've developed. One thing in particular, and this is to Laura Silva, who's still there. You had an excellent letter from Resist Density, which is in the packet I'm sending tomorrow. And now I notice it, I think you've just duplicated it. So there's the same letter, but under ECO. So it looks like you're just maintaining a duplicate file for some things like that. So I think that's covered. It hasn't gone away. Also, during since the last meeting, I've been to at least 3 different bike and pedestrian committees and task force efforts. Many of them, 2 of them especially, would like to come to the MCC, but there has not been an opportunity to fit that in our schedule. So I have submitted some comments there, both from myself and Lisa Ketchum, and links to those comments are on the agenda and the website. It's been sort of a multifaceted relationship with Caltrans. It's developing. You've seen some pieces of it there. This has also involved Caltrans people coming to look at specific issues, connecting us both with their operations and maintenance people. I know we have one member here, Michelle Dragony. Are you still here? Michelle, who noticed a Caltrans sign that was down on Highway 92 and brought up the issue of how fast can Caltrans, this is the sign.
That was actually Kate, Kate S., I believe, brought up that issue.
Well,
and she's still here.
Michelle had as well. Anyway,
Okay.
developing a more fast turnaround process with the maintenance crew for the area, which is just south of Half Moon Bay. So those are all ongoing and continuing discussions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Len. Dave?
Yeah, just real briefly, I did attend the Harbor Commission meeting this morning or early afternoon. And the West Point Trail restoration is continuing. They have permits in process and back and forth discussions with all the various agencies. So that was good to hear. And they requested some extra money for some of those early costs, but that is all in progress. That's all I had on that side. I did attend the grand opening of the fire department building and looked at the subsequent minute and a half quick tour of the new building. Those are both on their Facebook and Twitter pages for anybody who missed it and wants to watch it. It's worth it if you're in the area.
Great. Does anyone else on the council have any activity to report? If so, just go ahead and speak. Sounds like that's a no. Okay. Item 6, future agendas. So we only have one meeting in November because the next meeting would be next week during the day before Thanksgiving. Same situation happens in December, where we do have the first meeting, second Wednesday of the month on December 9th. And then the second meeting of the month would be canceled because it's right before Christmas. On that December 9th meeting, we will have the Media Creek Bridge, and we will have a presentation from the county to kind of update us on some of the plans and respond to the letter that we had sent earlier. We also have the election of the new members, or not the election, but the swearing in of the new members of the councils. So Dan, as mentioned, is reelected, and then Greg Dieguez and Jill Grant will be there. So make sure that, I know they're both on, make sure that you're able to attend on that date. And then we have the election of the officers. So the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. And then we'll talk about MCC future plans. So that's the agenda for December 9th. We also have tentatively, if Connect the Coasides gets its final draft out the first week of December, the week after Thanksgiving, they will want us to kind of have a meeting on that and give some feedback prior to the end of the year. So I wanted to just take a straw poll of members of the council, and including the new members, to see whether Wednesday, December 16th would work for a special meeting.
I would really rather not do that. I know it means postponing into January, but there's a lot of reasons we don't have a second meeting in December.
Sure. Let's just go around the council.
One other thing though, before we do that, could everybody show up to the December 9th meeting prepared to discuss when we are going to have our offsite meeting in January? Know what your calendars are before the meeting?
Yeah, I was actually thinking we could do that. Like, I know we tried it last year with blanking on the name of it, but like that tool where we can
work. We had to do it all in person anyway.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good point to bring up. We will need to plan that retreat the first week of January. So good idea. Let's discuss it then on December 9th.
Oh, let's not use the meeting time to discuss our schedules. We can do that offline.
That's true. We can probably do that. Okay, we'll figure that out.
Discuss 7 council members outside of public view.
But for just
we can discuss our meeting date.
Yeah,
no, we can't.
Well, the other thing we're going to have is a presentation on the Brown Act in January, especially for the new members, and get clarification on some of those things from county council. So, but just, okay, so let's continue going around on the question of a second meeting in December, tentatively proposed for the 16th, whether that date would work, or there's an or other dates potentially that week could work for people if we had to have it for Connect the Coastside. Claire?
I would very much like not to do it. I think that it's too bad if it gets to get pushed into January, but it's kind of an imposition at this point in a way.
Okay, Dan?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Well, that's 3 people who don't want to do it. What about, I guess, the new members? Let me just actually quickly ask the new members whether, just to confirm that they're available on December 9th for our first meeting, and then to weigh in on the December 16th. Greg Dieguez, are you still here?
Yeah, I'd be willing to do both those meetings.
Thank you. And Jill?
Yes, I'm available for both of the meetings as well.
Okay. My feeling on December 16th is, while I hear that people don't want to do it, I think it is important, if Connect the Coastside gets the draft out, that we try to comment on it. I would be available. It sounds like Len would be available as well.
I'm available. I think the other thing to consider is this is really as much for the MCC, it's also for the community to have an opportunity to hear it and basically begin to take it in. It's a process that will continue for at least another month or two, and we're looking for our second meeting to be one in which we basically decide how to vote relative to approval and more deeper consideration. So I would be entirely for getting this done on the 16th.
So the fact that a lot of the community won't be able to make it on the 16th is part of the reason.
There'll be good resources available from the presentations to look at the videos and to look at it. So I mean, to do the job. Anyway.
Okay, well, we're not going to commit to it right now because we're not even sure that Connect the Coastside is going to be, that the final draft will be ready in time. So I think we'll have to carry over this discussion till December 9th. Okay, well, that's it for the agenda. Yeah, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So moved. Hey, we made it out by 10.
All right.
Everyone.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.